Good afternoon, Evergreen. I hope everybody's doing well. Today we're going to read Chapter 5 of Fangspew and the Black Pond. The title of this chapter is Fangspew and Hibernation. So, that's what I'm thinking, concluded Fangspew. No hibernation. I'm staying awake all winter. T-Moss looked skeptical. Really? You think you can? Yes, I do. And think, why sleep away such a big chunk of your life? We frogs only live a couple of years in sleep. And to sleep away both winters seems foolish, don't you think? Fangspew and T-Moss were sitting at the base of T-Moss's tree home. As you might guess, it was late fall and the days were getting colder and shorter. T-Moss wasn't sure how these facts had precipitated Fangspew's determination not to sleep away the winter, but something had, and T-Moss felt himself being swept up in the excitement of the idea. Think of it all. All year awake, seeing snow and ice, something he'd only ever heard about. Okay, said T-Moss, I'm in, but reality started to sink in. What about food? Fangspew was quick with his response. No worries, that. I've checked with the deer, and they tell me there are bugs active during the winter months. T-Moss had another thought. I sleep alone in my tree over the winter months, so if I change my mind, no problem. But you guys hibernate at the bottom of the pond, right? The pond is going to freeze over, and you'll be stuck up here. No changing your mind. There was no putting off the eager frog. No worries, I won't be changing my mind. Imagine, seeing snow. And that settled it. Fangspew told the other frogs the plan, but no one was interested. They just looked at him as if he were a particularly odd bug that had crawled out from underneath a rotting stump, and then to remind him how good it felt to sleep. They might even throw in a politely smothered yawn for emphasis, but no one joined him except for T-Moss. T-Moss enjoyed the waning days of fall. The leaves finished their changed fall colors and then began to fall from the trees. The pond water got colder, although T-Moss didn't experience this for himself, frogs told him. Bugs became a bit more scarce, but that wasn't much of a concern as T-Moss was feeling well fed for the winter months. And as winter quickly approached, the frog population decreased rapidly at the pond. More and more frogs were taking a deep breath and swimming to the bottom of the pool. There they would mostly bury themselves in mud and fall asleep, not to awaken until spring. The departure of the frogs cut down on the nightly croaking noises, which went down to 0 in the space of 2 weeks. By the first good freeze, only Fangspew remained, and he loved the experience. The pond began to ice over, starting with the edge and working its way inward. Fangspew had dreamed of walking on the ice, but in practice it wasn't much fun. He kept falling on his face. Walking, for frogs, is unnatural. They might try to walk, but after a step or two, they jump. They just can't help themselves. And Fangspew discovered that jumping on the ice was painful. He'd use his back legs like normal, but every time they'd slip out to the sides and lever him over onto his chin. Every time he tried, he ended up doing a faceplant. And, unfortunately for him, T-Moss was gleeful witness, and thought Fangspew's effort was perhaps the funniest thing he'd ever seen, right up to the time when Fangspew had jumped out into the deer droppings by accident. It was the morning of the first snow that Fangspew got his revenge on T-Moss. Fangspew had no trouble navigating the 1 inch of fresh white snow. He simply hopped around, looking like a green piece of popcorn. But 1 inch of snow was taller than T-Moss. When he came down from his tree the morning of the first snowfall, he disappeared. He found himself tunneling through the snow, and wow, that was confusing. He had a horrible minute when he imagined getting lost and freezing in the white tunnel. Then he remembered it was only about 1 inch deep, so he stood up on his back legs and poked his head through the top crust of the snowfall. Voila! Now he could see where he was, and it was pretty neat. He could sneak up on Fangspew and give him a good scare. Yeah! Plop! Fangspew landed right next to him in the snow, causing him to jump with fright, snow flying. And how Fangspew laughed. He'd thought of it first. T-Moss, you should have seen your face. Man, I got you good. The two friends spent hours playing in the snow and pond ice. And don't you know, life was great. They both loved the quiet of the winter wood and their time of isolation. They found that bugs, while not as plentiful as summer, were still in sufficient supply. Additionally, they moved slower, so the frog and the gecko did not go hungry. T-Moss discovered that a few dead leaves added to his burrow helped against the cold nights. Fangspew learned from that and made a pile of dead leaves and slept in the middle of them. That kept him off the frozen mud, and he found it just perfect. And then life changed. It was on a Tuesday in December that the mandible bugzilla showed up at Black Pond. It came in a noisy rush, all snapping branches and crunching dead leaves. T-Moss, walking up his tree toward his hole, froze in position out of habit. Mandibles do not, as a rule, interest themselves in animals as small as geckos. But this one zigzagged directly toward T-Moss, who was rapidly wishing he was higher up the trunk. He had a fleeting thought, does it see me? And then his process broke and he scooted for altitude. His desperate gamble came just in time because the mandible did see T-Moss and stuck his claw out to cut him in half. and T-Moss's forward movement resulted in that sharp claw missing his midsection, but cleanly cutting his tail right off. It fell earthward, while T-Moss continued to sprint upward. The animal stooped over, knees bending outwards, carefully picked up the still wiggling tail, popped it in his corrugated mouth, and drooled. Fortunately, T-Moss saw none of that. He was safely back in his hole. He grieved the loss of his tail, learning for the first time that it helped with balance, and without it, he felt clumsy. The mandible zigzagged south toward the pond, hungry and grumpy. It had been some time since he had a good meal, and that makes anyone irritable. He hoped to surprise the frog colony and have a real feast. Unfortunately for the mandible, he was several weeks too late. The frogs were all hibernating, except for one. Fangspew heard the mandible approaching and buried himself in some leaves under a bush with just his eyes sticking out. He watched the frustrated mandible stomp around the pond's edge, grunting and clicking. It was one of the scariest things he'd ever seen, and for the first time he wished he was safely sleeping at the bottom of the pond. Both friends had a rough night of sleep. T-Moss knew his tail would grow back, but that didn't stop him from worrying that it wouldn't, and that worry kept him awake for a goodly portion of the night. Not only that, but it itched, which added to his discomfort. Fangspew spent the evening regretting his decision to skip hibernation. Sure, he did lots of fun so far, but the arrival of the mandible changed everything. Now he'd have to be on high alert full time. The next morning came both too early and not early enough. Fangspew took the path north to check in with T-Moss and greeted him from the bottom of the tree. "T-Moss, good morning. Did you hear that mandible buxilius last night? He came down to the pond, and man, was it grumpy." T-Moss stuck his head out of the hole. "The mandible came by here first, Fangspew, and he attacked me, took my tail. You think it'll grow back?" "Really? You okay? I'm sure it'll grow back, and soon. No worries. Come on down, let me see." T-Moss made his newly clumsy way down the tree trunk, moving slowly without the tail to balance him. Fangspew watched with concern, reminding himself that geckos are proud of their tails, and he would be a good friend not to laugh at T-Moss's awkwardness. "Is it hard to walk? Did it hurt?" T-Moss stopped in front of Fangspew, looked over his shoulder, such shoulders as geckos have, and surveyed the damage. "It's hard to walk. Rather throws off my rhythm, you know. But it doesn't hurt, thankfully, it just itches." "Well," Fangspew looked thoughtful. "Now what? What are we going to do? Staying awake to enjoy the winter is not looking so enjoyable right now. The longer we are out here, the greater the chances are the mandible will find us. He's already shown that he's hungry enough to go after small animals like you." T-Moss stopped looking over his truncated hindquarters and focused on Fangspew. "Right now, I'm thinking of sleep. I think we should make ourselves scarce by hibernating. But that's easy for me to say. My bed is 15 feet right above us right now. What about you? Black Pond is iced over. You can't get through that." "I know," mused Fangspew. "Let's walk south and think about it." The frog and the gecko set off, hopping, walking through the light dusting of snow. The sun made its chilly way skyward, provided very little in the way of warmth or light. Fangspew spoke first. "I don't weigh enough to break the ice. I can't throw a rock with enough force. Can you?" "No, I don't think so." Me either. But," here he paused and his face lit up, "the mandible buxilius does. If I can get him on the ice, he'll break through. Then I'll have my way to the bottom." T-Moss looked impressed. "Good idea. And if you're so hungry, it shouldn't be too hard to get him to follow you out there. Can mandibles swim?" "I don't know. Either way, it's worth a shot. When are you going to sleep?" T-Moss was a true friend, unwilling to leave Fangspew alone if his plan failed. "I tell you what. I'll wait until you get through the ice, then I'll sleep. That way, if the plan doesn't work, I'll still be around to spend the winter with you." "Thanks, T-Moss. That's good of you. Let's go to the pond. You need to find a place to watch from." A couple more hops and Fangspew stopped. "I can get the mandible to follow me under the ice. I don't think they're very smart. But how do I stay ahead of him? Every time I try to hop, I fall on my face. I won't be able to stay ahead of the mandible. The ice is just too slippery. It won't do me any good if he crashes through the ice with me in his claw." "Right," answered T-Moss. "Perhaps you could put down some dirt or sand where you'll be hopping. That might make it less slippery, you think?" So the friends decided to test the idea. At the side of the pond, T-Moss gathered small handfuls of dirt and took them out into the ice. Fangspew kicked mud clods from the shoreline, mud clods that broke apart upon landing. After coating the ice, Fangspew took a couple of tentative hops, fully expecting to faceplant. He was very surprised, pleasantly surprised, to discover that he could hop easily on the ice as long as he had sand or dirt on it. With that happy discovery, T-Moss and Fangspew continued the slow process of laying a narrow path of dirt from the shore toward the center of the pond. It took all morning and half the afternoon with a break for lunch, but they finished before dark. Then, per the plan, they said their goodbyes. and Timos disappeared into the brush to find a secure hiding place from which he could see the action. Fangspew took up his station at the water's edge and commenced croaking. Fangspew had a well-developed set of lungs. He was loud. He was doing his best to attract the hungry mandible Bugsilius. The waning minutes of daylight passed slowly as both frog and gecko waited, listening for any sound of an approaching animal. After 25 minutes, they were rewarded with a crashing sound that grew louder and closer. Fangspew looked toward the bushes where Timos was hiding and waved. Then, croaking loudly, he hopped 2 feet out into the ice, listening for the oncoming mandible, listening to his thumping heartbeat, waiting, watching for bushes for movement, every muscle tense and ready for this, the most important race of his life. The mandible Bugsilius crashed through the bush and in seconds was at the pond's edge. Fangspew was momentarily frozen like a frog popsicle, thinking, that animal is huge, then broke out of his paralysis and hopped toward the center of the pond, taking great leaps, aiming for the dirt and sand, resisting the temptation to look back. The mandible zigzagged out into the ice, fixated on the fleeing frog. Timos watched in horrible fascination. The mandible was terrifying, all black, with those stalk eyes swiveling about. He almost yelled at Fangspew, "Run!" When it looked like the race would be over before it even started. But then Fangspew took off on his own. Good thing, too, Timos thought later. If I'd yelled, the mandible might have come for me. The mandible, after pausing at the edge of the pond, took off after the hopping Fangspew, running in the familiar zigzag, first one direction, then reversing, and almost falling on the ice, gaining on the frog, getting further out into the center of the pond. What if the ice doesn't break? Flashed across Timos' mind. No such thoughts occurred to Fangspew. He was concentrating on hopping, launching at the correct angle to get the most forward velocity and distance. He could hear the slipping, scratching, breathing of the gaining mandible. Landed a particularly long hop, almost slipped, and felt the ice shift beneath his feet. It lurched, then dipped, and the cracking noise was deafening. Fangspew had time for 2 thoughts, one exultant, the other practical. It's working! And deep breath! He filled his lungs with chilly winter air as the ice completely gave way beneath him and the mandible, and he slipped easily between the spreading slabs of ice and kicked toward the bottom. He looked around as he sank and saw the thrashing mandible Bugsilius sinking beside him, flailing against the unwelcome water, movement slowing, then stopping, coming to a cold rest on the bottom. Fangspew reached the bottom too. The mud welcomed him, easing him towards sleep, his eyelids suddenly heavy. He smiled to himself as sleep took him, thought, dimly, hope Timos has a good sleep. I'll see him in the spring. And slept. The end. Thank you. We'll see you next time.